Hey, welcome back to another edition of Everything Football 62. I'm your host, Jonathan Big Tex Johnson, aka Uncle Tex, aka Professor Tex. Before we get started, y'all go ahead and subscribe to the page, smash that like button. Got any comments, concerns, anything like that, leave them down. That should have some for some nice back and forth, little bit of banter. September 9th, 1957. Uh, Group of high school boys in Arkansas because you got the disaggregation coming up there and whatnot. And you see a young Jerry Jones, 15 years old at the time, in the background and whatnot there, trying to discourage the black boys from coming up in there and whatnot. I think they even pushed the boys down there and everything and all that. I think there's a group of football players. Some of them had no business being there. They didn't supposed to go there, but some of them still went down there anyway. Interesting. So you talking about something. I have an uncle who was born in 57, one of my closest uncles. Was born in 1957, which means he came out of high school, I think, in 1975, right? He's 63, 64. So you're talking about a 63, 64-year-old picture of a 15-year-old snot-nosed kid. Don't even get me started on age 15, but I'm going to come back to that. And I'm going to ask this question. What the fuck that got to do with football now? What does that photo have to do with the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones, an 80-year-old man? And this man is around the same age. He's in the same age bracket as my father. I think he's about 2 or 3 years older than my father. Right? So he's born in the 40s. And this surfaced. Now, this obviously, because we live in a culture now where it's all about trying to cancel people, make people look silly. You have a platform where you can put stuff out. You can go look up stuff and find old photos of people. You can find old tweets, old Facebook posts and stuff like that, right? And they can bring this stuff out, upload it, and do all this. Don't know what it's going to do to him. It's not going to crumble his fortune, and the players ain't going to walk off. The hypocrisy of it all is this here. He was 15. Been different, probably different, and probably would have been a little bit different if he was in his 40s or 50s and whatnot. But will it made any difference if he was in 40s or 50s back then and still own the team up to now? He'd be extremely old, which ain't that big of a stretch, being that the owner of the Detroit Lions, Gary Ford, was originally a five-star. Get that. Henry Ford, the reason why we have cars nowadays, and you look at the situation, you don't think that Henry Ford, cars that we drive now, Henry Ford wasn't around a photograph with people that thought just like some of those young boys did? You follow what I'm saying? Let that sink in for a second. The majority of you, and I'm talking to African Americans, blacks, Nubians, whatever we want to call ourselves, and whatnot, you work for companies that was started, and the people that started and probably still company are still CFOs, CEOs, major owners of different corporations and whatnot, was round and rub elbows and even kin to or have family members that think just like that. If I'm wrong in the comments, please put that down in the comments for me. You got LeBron James saying what he said because of the whole Kyrie Irving thing, and him and Jerry had some kind of fallout or whatever, because I guess LeBron is still mad at Colin Kaepernick and what Jerry Jones made his players do because he was a big Cowboys fan and all this other kind of stuff. Well, that's fine and dandy and everything like that. LeBron, that looks good. It sounds good. Nice little sound bite and all this other type of BS. But in the end of it, when it's all over said and done with, homeboy, when it's all over said and done with, guess what? You still out there bouncing that basketball. Colin Kaepernick, they basically paid him to go away. He's had a baby. Colin Kaepernick didn't do a whole lot of talking when the stuff was going on, and he ain't doing no talking. He probably sitting on about between $40 and $60 million. Even if it's less, even if it's 30 or 40 or whatever like that. And you don't even hear nothing from this guy. He had a baby. I don't know if he's married or not, him and no girl, and he's living happily ever after. What? I was born in South, I say born or whatever, but basically raised in Southeast Texas, went to school there and everything. It was a time in the Golden Triangle, Beaumont, Texas, Port Arthur, Texas, Orange, Texas, called the Golden Triangle, a hub for a lot of great football players that came out of that. Jimmy Johnson went to Port Arthur, went to Port Arthur Thomas Jefferson, TJ as we affectionately called it. as it was called, and whatnot. You can open up that yearbook with him and a bunch of players that he played with, and all schools all white. This is back during the 60s, early 60s and whatnot. Now, you explain to me, you don't think that he has not hobnobbed with people and know people and have kinfolks that think that same exact way back during that time as a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid, 14, 15, 16-year-old kid. Again, same age bracket as my father, right? You don't think that? I guarantee you. Let me tell you a story. Let's go back down memory lane, back to around probably late September, October of 1983. I had a friend of my white friend of mine, and we go practice together, football practice, sophomore year playing JV, and he'd drop us off at home and stuff like that. We played ball. We was tight knit group. Me, him, and his girlfriend rode in the back. Other cats rode in the back. 2 or 3 other cats rode in the back. Saw their uncles one day. Came through there. Hey, what you guys doing? Da, 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 da. Guys that went to the same guys who graduated from the high school that I went to 13, 12, 11, 12, 13 years, probably in the early 70s sometime, or early 70s. Guys might have been in their mid to late 20s. Everything was cool. Come back the next day. They stopped my friend, my white friend. I'm not going to call no names. Stopped them. And they said, hey, get off our land with them niggas. Flabbergasted, completely backed up. Even the girl, she tripped out. We like, and my friend was like, what? Get them niggas off our land. And he said, and he was actually threatening to kick friend's ass if he didn't do what he said he did. So he backed up. I got out. Other black friends in the back got out. My friend's cousin, he got out and whatnot. White friend's cousin got out. Went and everything like that. And we waited down the road. He came back and stuff like that. I'm completely blindsided by this. I didn't tell my father till like years later, till like 1993, 94 about this. Because I already knew how my old man would have acted or what would have went on. And I held that with me for a long time. After that incident happened in around late September, early October of 1983, so it's 1984, January, athletic PE, lifting weights, wrestling, all that kind of stuff, hopefully preparing for the next season and everything. Me and the other guy, black friend of mine, we looked up, we saw those same 2 guys hobnobbing with one of our favorite coaches. Right? They saw us looking. They saw us looking, and they had an uncomfortable look, but being a lot older than us, they kept on doing what they was doing. And our coach is hobnobbing and kicking it with these guys. We're like, and I'm like, how does Coach, I didn't mean to try to say his name, I'm going to keep it out. How did this coach, I'm thinking he knows everything about these guys and whatever like that. The story, that was crazy. What it happened the day before, and the incident happened, another white guy was back there that we played ball with, went to school with, graduated with. He asked, and it was a little, because them guys had daughters, little young daughters around my brother's age at the time. So they probably around 4 or 5 years old. Well, this guy, as we found out, mooned those little girls. He mooned them. And that's something that white guys like to do. He mooned them. And of course, when it happened, of course, them guys would even ask, well, who was it? When like, yeah, whatever like that. And then you can go from there or whatever. And so how do I look at that coach at that particular time? How did I look at that coach? I played at a school. I went to a 90% all-white high school. I follow my high school to this day. I got a website built to this day for the football players that played all the way from 1970 up until now. I've been doing that since about 2013, 2014, right? And the crazy thing about that whole situation was the fact that that happened and whatnot, and where we played, and I to dedicate that because my love of football, the love of the sport, and the love of, and we always had a pretty decent football program, not a powerhouse or anything like that, but pretty decent football history. And one of my, it's funny but tragic at the same time. So my homeboy, one of my dearest homeboys to me, 40 plus years, right? My best friend, his family, he's like a brother to me. He seventh grade, this is 1979, I was in sixth grade. We had one of the best receivers to come through there at our school, in our school's history name, that was there. He's a 3-year starter, 3 years first team all district, first team. So he's a sophomore this particular year. Had a black quarterback who would eventually actually play pro ball for a couple so years. He and the receiver, because he was young, he'd catch a big pass, he'll catch a real difficult pass, and then he might drop it real easy. And that was kind of the back and forth thing with him. So one of the plays, he's wide open, ball, and he dropped it. Guy next to my friend stood up, screamed, "Catch the ball, nigger." This is the kind of school I went to. I graduated from a class of probably close to 100, and it was six blacks in the whole class. Really 5, because the other guy that came along, he went there our junior and senior year, and he graduated because he was going to school in Beaumont all the other years. So he did this, and it was crazy. So it's like when we're talking about these things that goes on in this situation, which is crazy. What do you say? What do you do? You probably go to the 31 owners, and it's somewhere along the line with these owners who have hobnobbed recently with people who think that same way right now in 2022. Don't even get me started with the president the former president, and all the stuff that he has got people up in arms, from the insurrection to everything else, the guys with the tiki torches and all that other type of stuff going on. Nobody seems to talk about that guilt by association. What does this have to do with Dallas Cowboy 2022 football team? Nothing. So if we're going to be honest and have some serious, honest dialogue, half the people that's made comments that have jobs and where they work at, go back and check the history of these places where you work at, and you'll find out the founder of them probably had racist tendencies as a grown man, not a 15-year-old. Not a 15-year-old. What were you doing at 15 years old? What was you doing? How were you acting? At 15, hell, I wanted to walk around with no goddamn shoestring laces and whatnot because Run DMC did it. One of the stupidest things ever, because it's like it's like you're trying to walk with shoes on, and it's the reason why you have shoelaces is to keep the shoe tight so it stays secured on your foot, on your feet. When you have it like that, those shoes have a tendency in the back for the bottom to come from under, like you're walking in slippers. Okay? This is what we're talking about here. And that is why I said all of this is bullshit and a smokescreen. This is somebody who don't like the Dallas Cowboys, found this photo and decided to put this up when they're getting ready to play the Indianapolis Colts and trying to go for their 9th win and stay close to Philly in the NFC East to try to sit up there and secure the NFC East title. What does this photo and Jerry Jones of him as a 15-year-old in 1957, he's born in 42, just recently turned 80. What does this have to do with anything at this particular time? What does it have to do with it? Y'all can leave that stuff below. Y'all can sit up and say, oh man, this, that. No. Seriously. No. Screw the Homer crap. We're not going to go down that road with the Homer shit. What does this have to do with today? He was 15. What did you do when you was 15? Be in places where you didn't supposed to be at. Hang around with people that your parents told you don't hang around with. Go to places where your parents told you not to go to, whether adult supervision told you not to go to. But yet, you see this. If you feel that strongly about that, then you need to walk off the job, the very job that you own right now that allows you to do the things that you do. Because you'll find out in the history of a lot of these places where you work at and whatnot, where you work at, it was people that founded companies like that thought just like these young boys did. And you still work for them to this very day. And there's people in those jobs and whatnot feel that way right now in 2022. And I'm sure I can find pictures of all of the different owners. And again, I go back to the Detroit Lions. And the owner there, she ought to be in her mid-90s. Last championship they seen was when Bobby Lane played there. You don't think that people hobnob with people that thought like that. Nobody talks about that. But because Jerry Jones, all news is good news for him. Because he wants to keep, his main thing is to keep his Cowboys on everybody's lips. What does that have to do with today? We can say, oh, the racial tension is this, is that, is that. Whatever. It's that because that's what you want it to be. We know racism still exists, still rears its ugly head. It is what it is. Bottom line. But you're able to do pretty much anything that you want to do in this country, for the most part. So the funny thing that I find in what LeBron James is saying and the whole thing about Kyrie, I don't see anything wrong with what Kyrie Irving said. Because really, you're not even dealing with a race. You're not dealing with anything dealing with a race. When you talk about anti-Semitic and all this type of stuff, you got people that don't like them because if you break it down to what it's supposed to be, it's about a religion. Because the face of the Jews are white people. So what are we talking about here? So if you take Jerry Seinfeld, if you take Jerry Jones, if you take Paul Michael Glacier, if you take David Soul, if you take any of those type of people and line them up, and I ask you, what do you see? I see 4 white guys, but a couple of those guys are supposed to be Jewish. That's their quote unquote faith. Has nothing to do with their race. And Jew is a distorted word anyway from the term Judah, that's wrong because there's no J in the language, so it's Yahudah. But that's something else. I can go play in that realm if I wanted to, but I'm not doing it. It's football only, but I'm only bringing this up because there's a lot of talk about this. And I'm like, where's this coming from? So if you feel that strongly about something that Jerry Jones did when he was 15 years old, whether he was up there or not, and he's in the back, he's not in the front. He's in the back, not in the front. Got some kid with a cigarette in his mouth who probably was like, what is he doing with a cigarette? And this photo resurfaced after all these years, all the big deals, everything that has happened over all these years. But this happened this time coming into a game, coming after a victory versus the Giants. And all of this, this pops up late last week. And then getting ready to go in and try to get their 9th win against that of the Indianapolis Colts. Why? He's 15. Right? This didn't come up when he was trying to buy the Cowboys. I didn't see that. Any big deals that he made, I didn't see that. But this week, of all weeks, this week, explain that to me. Okay? Somebody explain that to me down in the comments. It's ancient history. That man is not the same man as that boy was in 1957. And we know that. Oh, he hasn't hired a coach. He hasn't done this. And yeah, whatever. I can name a whole bunch of other football franchises that hasn't hired a coach. We know the hired coach and disparaging the process that goes on there. So let's stop like we don't know what's going on. But this here, it's ridiculous. Smear campaign. I have no problem with it. It is what it is. You'll find a lot of photos like that. You'll find a lot of photos of coaches, of owners of companies, owners of teams, and whatnot, hobnobbing with people that had the same mindset. And you see it, and what you're going to do, you're going to still get your ass up in the morning and take your ass to work until you find something better. You're going to do that. And if you go someplace else, it's going to be the same goddamn thing. So stop the fake ass outrage because that's all it is. Stop it. I don't see nothing here, whatever about it. He felt that way. Even if he felt that way, 1957, 15-year-old kid. I wanted to walk around in a fucking tracksuit and shoes with no laces back in 1983. That's what I wanted to do in 1983. That's it. 83, 84, 85. 86, 86. I wanted to be that way all the way up to 19 years old and probably a little bit further than that. That's all I wanted to do. And chase girls and play football. That's it. You had a kid that was 15 years old that wanted to dress like Boy George. They look at that shit now, they're completely embarrassed by that. Wanted to be Boy George or dress like Boy George. Now, a lot of them same people have families or grandfathers and whatnot who look at that thing and say, oh, what the hell was I thinking? So stop the fake outrage. This has nothing to do with football. This is a smear campaign. And I don't care what LeBron James said because it's all bullshit. Because if you get down to it, Lakers, Jenny Buss, going down to Dr. Jerry Buss, he probably hobnobbed and he was cool with Magic Johnson, but he was around people that did not care for blacks. Matter of fact, the way Jack Kent Cooke carried himself for the Washington Redskins, how he looked at it and whatnot, he was a bigot. And we can go on and on and on and on. We can go on all day. So stop it. Like I tell you guys all the time, there's no greatest of all time as long as time's still going on. And I tell you guys all the time, numbers don't lie and get emotional. People do. You guys have a good one.